What's up everyone, Piscean here. This is going to be a follow-up to my album retrospectives video. And please like, subscribe, comment, share if you dare, and care with peace and love. I hope everyone's doing good. So, I do not want what I haven't got. Excuse me. This is going to be an Astro philosophical reading. Sinead O'Connor's 1990 act of holy subtraction. So, on March 20th, 1990, the sun ignited to 0 degree of Aries, the world's navel, the point where the personal becomes planetary, and the moon wore Capricorn like a hair shirt. Sinead O'Connor released not a follow-up, but a renunciation. The sky was a courtroom emptied of furniture, a cathedral stripped of gold, a garden where Eve handed back the apple. I do not want what I haven't got arrived as a subtraction, a fast from the feast of wanting. Prayer that was also a diagnosis of a planet drunk on more. What follows is its horoscope, 10 stations of a soul learning to need nothing, 2 houses of the silence that follows, and the long excruciating art of becoming empty enough to hold the infinite. Excuse me. The natal chart. So the Aries point in the Capricorn congregation of grief. On that equinoctial afternoon, the heavens were a parliament of stone and fire. The sun had just crossed the Aries point, 0 degrees of the Ram, the degree of the world made manifest, the raw will that erupts from the dark of Pisces and demands to be counted. Sinead's voice was that Aries sun, a thing that did not ask for permission, a frequency that cut through the noise of a decade and a genre and an industry and a church. But the sun at this degree was not a warrior king, it was a newborn, a lamb of beginning that knew it would end, and that knowing gave every note of mortal urgency. The moon, the album's emotional engine, sat at 10 degrees Capricorn conjunct Neptune at 12 degrees Capricorn. Grief had become stone, had become a cathedral, had become a mist that refused to lift. The Capricorn moon is the mother who is also the father, the nurturer who is also the laws that must be structured or it will swallow you whole. Neptune so close blurred that structure into a ghost of a ghost, the mother who died in a car crash, the mother Ireland, the mother church, all of them dissolving into the same fog, the same impossible ache. And the moon was not alone in Capricorn. Saturn at 23 degrees, Uranus at 8 degrees, and Neptune at 12 degrees formed a stellium in the sign of the institution, the skeleton, the long winter of the soul. Saturn was the dogmatic weight, the father, the pope, the music industry, the law that said women should be silent. Uranus was the sudden shattering rebellion that would burst from that structure in 2 years with the photo of a pope torn to pieces. Neptune was the collective dream turned nightmare, the fog of a world that had lost its way and called it order. This Capricorn stellium was the album's bone marrow. Every song, a negotiation with authority, a reckoning with the weight that grief had calcified into an armor. Jupiter, the great expander, sat at 1 degrees Cancer, exactly opposite the Capricorn congregation and squaring the Aries sun. This was the album's hidden furnace. Jupiter in Cancer is the mother exalted, the womb of the universe, the longing for a home that has been lost forever. The opposition to the Capricorn planets pulled that longing into a war with the law of the father. The square to the Aries sun forced the war into the open, into the voice, into the body of a young woman who was both a mother herself and a child who had been orphaned. The T-square is the album's central generative tension. I want, Jupiter in Cancer. I am forbidden to want, Saturn in Capricorn. I will speak anyway, Sun in Aries. The remaining planets added their thin, sharp cuts. Venus at 14 degrees Aquarius, trying the Aries sun, made love a matter of universal law, a cool, high-frequency compassion that could hold strangers and enemies and dead mothers and pop icons in a single embrace. Mars at 4 degrees Aquarius, also trying the sun, gave the rage a channel, the collective, the political, the refusal to fight only for the self. Mercury, at 28 degrees Pisces on the anoretic edge of the mystic ocean, was the voices, the last transmission from the deep before the Aries fire took over. Pluto at 17 degrees Scorpio sextile the Capricorn stellium, a silent partner in the basement. The death drive that had already been and gone. The mother's accident, the corpse in the grave that I am stretched on the grave, danced upon. The north node Rahu at 14 degrees Aquarius, south node at 14 degrees Leo, pointed the evolutionary arrow away from the rock star throne, the ego, the adoration, the golden child, and toward the collective network, the radical equality, the voice that belongs to no one and therefore everyone. This is the chart of an album that was not a product but an act of spiritual warfare, a divestment, a stripping of every ornament, till only the truth remained, and the truth was a girl with a shaved head and a prayer she had written herself. The 10 houses and the 2 silences, a track-by-track unburdening. Let's talk about the first house. Feels so different. Sun at 0 degrees Aries, Moon in Capricorn trine. The ascendant opens not with arrival, but with aftermath. I feel so different now. Sunny sings over strings that sound like the sky yawning, and the first house is a self that has already undergone a death and is still standing blinking in the ruins. The Aries sun is the new birth, the raw will to begin again. The Capricorn moon is the weight of all the funerals that preceded this morning. This is Nietzsche's 3 metamorphoses in 6 minutes. The camel that bore the grief, the lion that roared against God, the child that says yes to a new game. The song is a 6-minute exhalation, a first house portrait of identity as a process of subtraction. I'm not what I was, I'm not what I wanted, I am the difference itself. Second house, I am stretched on your grave, Pluto and Scorpio sextile Capricorn stellium. What do you value? The second house answers with a paradox. The most precious thing is a corpse. I am stretched on your grave is a 17th century Irish poem set to a beat that sounds like a heart trying to restart. A love song to a dead mother, a dead god, a dead country. Sunny's voice is both the mourner and the ghost, the one who lies down on the earth and the one who's buried beneath it. Pluto and Scorpio, sextile in the Capricorn stellium, makes the grave a portal, not an ending. The value system of the second house is a radical, Celtic Christianity that finds the sacred in the rot, the mother in the soil, the resurrection in the refusal to leave the grave. I am still waiting, she sings, and the waiting is the treasure, the only coin that grief mints. Third house, 3 babies. Mercury at 29 degrees Pisces, Jupiter in Cancer. Communication becomes a lullaby for the living and the dead. The third house of words, siblings, and the daily mind is answered with a portrait of 3 children, perhaps her own, perhaps the self she had been, perhaps the Holy Family reimagined as a single mother and her brood. Mercury at 29 degrees Pisces, the last gasp of the mystic, makes every syllable a prayer. Jupiter in Cancer expands the lullaby into a cosmic holding, a womb made of sound. This is Christiva semiotic chora, the pre-verbal music of the mother's body. Third house telegram from a place before language that language can only circle. The 3 babies are 3 hopes, 3 fears, 3 chances to get it right, and the song rocks them all. Fourth house, the Emperor's new clothes. Saturn in Capricorn, Jupiter in Cancer opposite. Roots, home, and the father's law are answered with a nursery rhyme that has become a war crime. I see the Emperor's new clothes, and he declares in the Emperor is every patriarch who has ever demanded that the world pretended he is dressed. Saturn in Capricorn is the Emperor as an institution. Jupiter in Cancer opposing it is the mother's voice that sees through the lie. The song is the fourth house reckoning with the fathers. The father of the church, the father of the state, the father who is not there, the father who is too there, and it finds them all naked, foolish, small. Bachelor's poetics of the childhood home becomes the poetics of the empty throne room, the palace that the child must burn to find her own home. Fifth house, black boys on mopeds. Venus in Aquarius, North Node in Aquarius. The house of romance, play, and children is invaded by a photograph of innocence and state violence. Black boys on mopeds are a vision of joy and danger, of youth criminalized by the color of its skin. Venus in Aquarius makes love a political act, a solidarity with the boys who are her children, her brothers, her charges. Rahu in Aquarius points the evolutionary arrow toward a collective future where no child is a target. This is a fifth house play that has become a protest, a lullaby that has become a slogan, a love song for the sons of other mothers who are also her sons. Sixth house, nothing compares to you. Moon in Capricorn conjunct Neptune, Jupiter in Cancer opposite. The daily grind of grief, the sixth house of health, labor, and the body's relentless clock is answered with the most famous heartbreak song of the late 20th century. It's been 7 hours and 15 days, and he begins, and the specificity is a Virgoan, Marceau, and detail smuggled into Capricorn's cathedral. Grief is a job, a shift you clock into every morning. The moon in Capricorn conjunct Neptune is the mother-shaped hole that every love tries to fill. Jupiter in Cancer opposite it is the longing for a home that no lover can provide. The song's genius is that it is not about the lover who left, it is about the mother who died, the god who vanished, the self that cannot be found in another's arms. The video single Tir is a baptism, a sixth house ritual of daily purification, a proof that the body can still witness what the soul has lost. Seventh house, jump in the river. Venus in Aquarius trine Sun, Mars in Aquarius, the house of partnership and open enemies, becomes a surrender to the current. Jump in the river, Sunit urges, and the river is a lover, a god, a dissolution of the self that is not death but a larger life. Venus in Aquarius trine the Aries Sun makes the partnership a cosmic collaboration, a joining of two wills that does not diminish each other. Mars Aquarius gives the surrender an active political edge. Jumping into the river is not passivity, but a choice, a deliberate unmaking of the ego's walls. This is Bataille's erotism as a baptismal font, a seventh house contract signed in water. the only element that can hold two bodies without separating them. 8th house. You cause as much sorrow. Pluto in Scorpio, Saturn in Capricorn. Sex, death, and transformation are compressed into a quiet, almost gentle accusation. You cause as much sorrow, Sunit sings, and the you is both a lover and the world, the church, the mother who left, the self who stayed. Pluto in Scorpio gives the sorrow an abyssal depth. Saturn in Capricorn makes it a structural, permanent feature of the landscape. This is the 8th house as a wound that will not close, a debt that has been paid in advance by a woman who has already lost everything, and therefore cannot be threatened with loss. The song's slow funeral pace is a refusal to hurry toward a healing that would be a lie. 9th house, the last day of our acquaintance. Rahu in Aquarius, Mercury at 29 degrees Pisces. The quest for meeting, the 9th house of philosophy, religion, and the far horizon, arrives at a door that is closing. This is the last day of our acquaintance, and he declares in the line is a ritual of severance, a legal document, a blessing. Rahu in Aquarius demands a future that is free of the past entanglements. Mercury at 29 Pisces speaks the final words of a chapter that is dissolving into the sea. This is a divorce proceeding filed in heaven, a 9th house pilgrimage that ends not in a temple, but at the threshold, where the only prayer is goodbye. The song's swelling strings are the sound of a soul being cut loose. 10th house, the silent mitre, Saturn in Capricorn, Uranus in Capricorn. Now, no song occupies this house, but the silence is the album's public face. The 10th house of reputation and legacy is the space between the tracks, the weight of what Sunni will become, the shaved head, the ripped photo, the ordination, the fatwa, the exile. Saturn in Capricorn is the institution that would punish her. Uranus in Capricorn is the rebellion that would liberate her. The silence here is not an absence, but a prophecy, a 10th house throne that she refused to sit on, a crown that she melted down and gave to the poor. 11th house, the communion of the unwanted, Venus in Aquarius, Rahu in Aquarius. House of friends, community, and future visions is a choir of all the self she had been and all the self she had not yet become. Venus in Aquarius makes this choir a network of radical love, a solidarity that extends to every woman who has been silenced, every child who has been hurt, every soul that has been told it was not enough. Rahu in Aquarius points toward a future where the collective is not a market but a monastery, a garden where the lion and the cobra sleep. The 11th house dream is not in the songs, but in the space between them, the breath the listener takes before the next track, the quiet decision to be part of the change. 12th house, I do not want what I haven't got, Neptune in Capricorn, Moon in Capricorn, Pluto in Scorpio. The final house of dissolution, the unconscious, and the return to the source is the album's title. A 45-second prayer spoken in a cappella, a voice and nothing else. I do not want what I haven't got is a renunciation of the engine of suffering, a Buddhist sutra, a Stoic maxim, a Christian prayer of detachment. Neptune in Capricorn dissolves the ego's architecture. Moon in Capricorn weeps with the relief of letting go. This is the 12th house exit, a door that opens into nothing, and that nothing is everything. The prayer is not a request, it is a statement of a fact, a performative utterance that changes the speaker by being spoken. Sinead O'Connor, at the end of her second album, had arrived at a destination that was not a place, but a posture, the open hand, the empty cup, the soul that has stopped grabbing and begun to receive. The dialectic of subtraction, wanting as the original wound. The natal chart of I do not want what I haven't got is governed by the cardinal T-square among the Aries Sun, Cancer Jupiter, and Capricorn stellium. This is not the oceanic intensity of the lion and the cobra, nor the political fury of Mind Bomb, which we'll talk about later. This is a theology of subtraction, a via negativa that finds the sacred not in what is added, but in what is removed. The title is a philosophical key here. Desire is the root of suffering, and the only cure is to want nothing beyond what is already present. In a decade defined by accumulation, more wealth, more fame, more noise, Sinead drew a circle and stepped inside it alone. The Capricorn stellium is the architecture of that circle. Grief, discipline, authority, and the collective dream are all collapsed into a single pressure that demands a response. The response is not rebellion, that would come later, but acceptance. The moon conjunct Neptune in Capricorn is a grief so deep it has become a form of weather, and the only way to survive weather is to let it pass through you. The Aries sun, squared by that grief and that longing, does not fight. It speaks. It names the emperor's new clothes, names the sorrow, names the last day. The act of naming is the Aries fire, a clean, hot burn that leaves nothing but ash and sky. Philosophically, the album is a synthesis of Buddhist detachment and Catholic mysticism, filtered through a woman's body and a pop star's platform. The Buddhist teaching that desire causes suffering is given flesh in the line, I do not want what I haven't got. The Catholic practice of mortification is reborn as a public act of humility. A shaved head, a refusal to lip sync, a refusal to play the national anthem, but the album is not ascetic in a life-denying sense. The love in Nothing Compares to You is not denied. It is felt fully and then released. The sorrow in You Cause As Much Sorrow is not repressed, it is named, and in the naming it loses its power. This is a punk mysticism, a theology of the open hand that does not reject the world but holds it lightly, knowing that everything is passing. The legacy, an empty cup that still overflows. Alright, so more than 3 decades later, I Do Not Want What I Haven't Got remains Sinead O'Connor's most commercially successful and most misunderstood album. The world heard Nothing Compares to You and thought it was a love song about a lost boyfriend. The world saw the tear and thought it was a performance, but the album's true audience has always been the ones who understood that the tear was real, that the prayer at the end was the destination, that the title was not a slogan but a survival manual. Pluto's entry into Aquarius, now squaring the album's natal Uranus and Capricorn, reactivates its voltage of institutional reckoning. The church Sinead indicted has crumbled. The voices she amplified, the abused, the silenced, the mad, the holy fools, are now the chorus of a new world. Sinead herself has become an ancestor, a lion and a cobra who finally lay down together in a garden beyond all wanting. The album she left behind is a cup, and the cup is empty, and the emptiness is full, and the fullness is a voice that will never stop singing. I do not want what I haven't got, and in that not wanting, she had everything. I think because I already mentioned it, I'm going to go ahead and talk about Mind Bomb, which is a very old album, but it still holds. Skip ahead. Actually, yeah, go backwards. Alright. So, Mind Bomb came out in 1989, and if you don't know this album, basically it's the band DB, and yes, that is their actual name. It's actually just one guy for the most part. Alright, so on May 16th, 1989, as the sun anchored itself in the last decan of Taurus, stubborn, erotic, unwilling to be moved, and the moon balanced a silver coin on the tip of a Libra scale, Matt Johnson released an album that was not a collection of songs, but a gauntlet thrown at the feet of God. The sky was a grand jury, every planet a witness, every aspect a cross-examination of the 20th century's dying faiths. Mind Bomb arrived as a political theodicy, a love song to a burning world, and a diagnosis of a generation that had been beaten before it could stand. What follows is its horoscope, 8 chambers of a bomb's anatomy, 4 voids where the shrapnel still flies, and the long, excruciating art of telling the truth while the world plugs its ears. Falling on deaf ears, honestly. That's the story of my life. The natal chart, the Capricorn collapse, and the Taurus stubborn heart. On that spring afternoon, the heavens staged a coup. The sun at 25 degrees Taurus, conjunct Mercury at 10 degrees Taurus, bathed the album in a light that was bodily undeniable and slow. Matt Johnson's voice was that solar Taurus, a baritone anchored in the gut, a truth that could not be argued out of existence. Mercury and Taurus made every word a physical object, a stone dropped into still water, a hammer wrapped in velvet. Venus at 22 degrees Gemini scattered love across a sky of data streams, a love that was both intimate and abstract, a duet of twin longings that could never quite join hands. Mars at 10 degrees Cancer squared that Venus, made desire a wound that bled inward, rage expressed not through fire but through the weeping walls of a childhood home, through the belly of the motherland under siege. The outer planets crowded into a historic pileup. Saturn at 14 degrees Capricorn, Uranus at 5 degrees, Neptune at 12 degrees formed a triple conjunction in the sign of the Father, the state, the skeleton of the world that was crumbling in real time. The stellium is the album's core, the death of ideology, the collapse of the Berlin Wall before the wall had fallen, the strange marriage of authoritarian structure, Saturn, revolutionary rupture, Uranus, and collective delusion, Neptune, in a single grinding sigh. The Cold War was ending, but the bomb was still ticking, and Johnson had his ear to the metal casing. Jupiter at 15 degrees Gemini, squaring Mars and sextiling the North Node, expanded the mind's chatter into a global broadcast, the media as a nervous system, the talk shows, holy wars, slogans that were already eating themselves. Pluto at 13 degrees Scorpio posed the Taurus sun, dragging every earthly certainty into the underworld of sex, death, and power, insisting that the truth was not a solid thing but a corpse you had to dig up yourself. The moon in early Libra, the chart's emotional weather, balanced scales on a battlefield. Relationships, justice, beauty, all were on trial. Rahu at 28 degrees Aquarius, Ketu at 28 degrees Leo, pointed the evolutionary arrow away from the rock star throne and toward the collective network, the circuit of souls that might survive the blast. Mind Bomb is not an album about Johnson's ego. It is an album about us, about the beaten generation and the gods who abandoned it. 12 houses, 4 silences, track by track detonation. Alright, first house, Good Morning Beautiful, Sun in Taurus, opposite Pluto and Scorpio. The ascendant opens with a whisper after the bomb has already gone off. Good Morning Beautiful is the voice of a survivor greeting the dawn through a cracked window, the self reborn in a world that ended overnight. The Sun in Taurus insists on the body's continuance, the breath, the skin, the stubborn pulse, while Pluto and Scorpio opposite it reminds that every morning is a resurrection from a grave. Nietzsche's Zarathustra descending from the mountain is here a man, making coffee in a ruined kitchen. The song's gentle, meandering structure is the sound of the ego, piercing itself together from the fragments of first house portrait of the self as an aftermath. Second house. Armageddon days are here again, Saturn conjunct Neptune in Capricorn, Jupiter in Gemini. The house of values, worth, and material resources is invaded by a carnival of holy war. Islam is rising, the Christians mobilizing. Johnson intones his voice a deadpan news anchor reporting from the apocalypse. Saturn conjunct Neptune in Capricorn is the institutionalization of mass delusion. Religion as a state apparatus, God as a missile silo. Jupiter in Gemini bombards the listener with data. Verses, slogans, images of second house audit that binds the soul's treasury full of counterfeit coins. Baudrillard's hyperreality here wears a cassock and carries a rifle. The only real value is the courage to see the joke. And Johnson's delivery is a bitter laugh that refuses to die. Third house, the violence of truth. Mercury in Taurus, square, Mars in Cancer. Communication becomes a blunt instrument. The third house of words, siblings, and neural pathways is answered with a speech act that hurts. Mercury in Taurus means the truth is not an idea, but a thing. You can touch it, it has weight, it leaves a bruise. The square to Mars in Cancer channels all the rage of the wounded inner child into the sentence, turning the song into a domestic argument with the universe. Foucault's parrhesia, the ancient practice of speaking truth to power at great personal risk, becomes a guitar riff and a croon. Johnson is not asking for permission. He's stating what is, and the violence is not in the truth, but in the world that forces it to be spoken. Fourth house, Kingdom of Rain. Moon in Libra, Mars in Cancer, Venus in Gemini. Home becomes a weather system. The fourth house of roots, the mother and the ancestral ground is duet with Sinead O'Connor, two voices tangling like ivy on a crumbling wall. Moon in Libra yearns for a partner in the deluge, as someone to hold while the house floods. Mars in Cancer makes the kingdom a place of emotional warfare, a childhood bedroom that is also a war zone. Kingdom of Rain is Bachelar's Poetics of Intimate Space dissolved into a storm. The cellar is underwater. The attic is a cloud, and the only shelter is the other's voice. This is the album's aching, bleeding center. Fifth house, the beaten generation, Jupiter in Gemini, Rahu in Aquarius. The house of romance, creativity, and self-expression becomes a self-portrait of a generation that was promised a revolution and handed a hangover. The beaten generation is a play on the beats, but the joke is a wound. The beat is also the rhythm of a beating, the percussion of a body taking hits. Jupiter in Gemini amplifies the cultural noise into a generational diagnosis. The media, the drugs, the empty freedom. Rahu in Aquarius points toward a collective future, but the song is stuck in the present tense of disillusionment. This is Korak's On the Road, reread as a police report. Fifth house play that is no longer fun, but remains necessary. Sixth house. August and September, Saturn in Capricorn, the Sun in Taurus trines Saturn. The daily grind of time, the sixth house of health, labor, and the body's slow decay becomes a calendar of loss. August and September are 2 months that once held a love, and now hold only the memory of its dissolution. Saturn in Capricorn gives time a structural, crushing weight. The Sun in Taurus trines it, finding a strange, sad peace in the acceptance of the season's end. This is a meditation on the labor of mourning, the daily work of remembering and releasing. Camus's Sisyphus is here a man circling dates on the calendar. The boulder, a broken heart, and yet the song's beauty suggests that even this labor is worth doing. Seventh house, gravitate to me, Venus in Gemini, Moon in Libra, Pluto in Scorpio sextile. The house of partnership and open enemies is a love song that acknowledges the fundamental strangeness of attraction. Gravitate to me is a command and a confession. A Venus in Gemini seduction that is also an intellectual puzzle. Why do bodies move toward each other? The Moon in Libra adds a yearning for balance, a scales that tips with every heartbeat. Pluto and Scorpio sextile from the 8th house suggests that even the gentlest gravitation is shadowed by the death drive, by the knowledge that all orbits decay. This is the physics of the heart. A 7th house contract signed in invisible ink. Right, the 8th house, beyond love. Pluto and Scorpio, Mars and Cancer trine Pluto. Sex, death, and transformation are located in a place beyond love. The 8th house, ruled by Pluto, is a realm of what comes after the romance has burned away. Beyond love is a slow nocturnal crawl into a space where the self dissolves, where the lover's body becomes a door. Pluto and Scorpio is at home here, a gravity well that pulls every need into the abyss. Mars and Cancer trines Pluto, making the desire both deeply personal and terrifyingly impersonal. A return to the womb that is also a descent into the grave. Betelgeuse, little death is here a big one, an annihilation that feels like peace because it is the peace of not being. The 9th house, the plight of meaning, Jupiter and Gemini, Rahu and Aquarius. No track occupies this house, but the silence here is louder than any song. The 9th house of philosophy, religion, and long journeys is the question the album cannot answer. Is there a meaning beyond the bomb? Jupiter and Gemini multiplies the possibilities without resolving them. Rahu and Aquarius points toward a collective solution, but the path is unwalked. This house is the space between the album's tracks, white silence after beyond love, the listener's own breath held in the dark. 10th house, public autopsy, Saturn and Capricorn conjunct Uranus and Neptune. The midheaven, the house of reputation and legacy, is the album's own career as a bomb thrown into the marketplace. Saturn and Capricorn makes Mind Bomb a monument, a public indictment that cannot be ignored. Uranus electrifies its message with a sudden collective shock. Neptune veils it in a fog of controversy and misunderstanding. Johnson's 10th house legacy is the courage to stand at the top of the mountain and shout that the emperor is dead and that the emperor was always a ghost. 11th house, the mercy beat, Neptune and Capricorn, Venus and Gemini, Moon and Libra. The house of friends, community, and future visions is given a heartbeat, a prayer, a rhythm of compassion that emerges from the wreckage. The mercy beat is a call for a new kind of collective, 11th house utopia built not on dogma but on the body's own pulse. Neptune and Capricorn gives the beat a strange institutional form, a church of the drum machine, while Venus and Gemini and the Moon and Libra make it a love song for every soul that survived the blast. This is Bloch's principle of hope as a baseline, a promise that the beaten generation might yet learn to dance. 12th house, the echo of the bomb, Pluto and Scorpio opposite Sun, Neptune and Capricorn. Final house of dissolution, and the unconscious is a silence after the record ends, the ringing in the ears, the dust settling on the furniture of a world that was always already falling apart. Pluto and Scorpio opposite the Taurus Sun is the truth that Mind Bomb never quite speaks aloud, that the bomb is inside you, that the mind is itself a weapon, and that to think is to detonate. Neptune and Capricorn dissolves the wall between the self and the state, leaving only a single sustained note. The 12th house is the exit through the back of the skull, a door that was never locked because there was never a wall. The Mind Bomb dialectic. Truth as a nuclear object. The natal chart of Mind Bomb is dominated by the historic Capricorn stellium of Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, a conjunction that marks the end of a world order and the birth of a new, bewildering dispensation. Johnson's album is, at its core, a confrontation with the violence of truth in an age of simulation. Taurus Sun insists on the real, the body, the earth, the stubborn fact, while the Capricorn stellium describes a world in which every institution has become a weapon of mass distraction. The bomb of the title is not a nuclear warhead, it is the mind itself, the human capacity to see through the veil and to be shattered by what it finds. Philosophically, the album operates at the intersection of Debord's Spectacle and Nietzsche's Death of God, recast through a pop sensibility that is too heartbroken to be cynical. Songs are not sermons, they are symptoms. Armageddon Days is a spectacle of religion. Violence of Truth is a refusal to accept the spectacle's terms. Kingdom of Rain is the intimate cost of living under a lie. Beyond Love is the only exit, a love so absolute it undoes the self that loves. The Capricorn stellium ensures that the album is never merely personal. This is a work of political theology, a diagnosis of the systems that shape our suffering. The Taurus Sun and the Cancer Mars keep it tethered to the body, to the ache of missing someone in August, to the sound of a lover's voice in a kingdom of rain. The dialectic is between the system and the skin, between the bomb and the breath. Johnson's genius is to make them sound like the same thing. A bomb that is still ticking. More than 3 decades later, Mind Bomb has not dated because the bombs it described have only multiplied. Pluto has since entered Aquarius, squaring the album's natal Uranus and Capricorn, reactivating its voltage of institutional collapse. We live now in an age of Armageddon Days that are no longer scheduled but permanent, perpetual war of truths and post-truths, a beaten generation that has been beaten so many times it has forgotten what standing feels like. In this context, the album endures as a prophetic act. Proof that telling the truth is still possible, even if the truth is that the gods have fled and left us holding the detonator. The morning is still beautiful, the mercy beat is still playing, and somewhere in a kingdom of rain, 2 voices are still holding each other, waiting for the flood to recede and the real to begin again. let's see here. So, this is for Penelope Scott's album. And this is just a retrospective on it, without the astrology, actually. We're going to talk about her album, Public Void. Now, some albums capture a cultural moment. Rarer still are those that manage to be a diagnosis. Penelope Scott's Public Void is a diagnosis. Released in the weird, exhausted interregnum of 2021 after the initial pandemic shock, before whatever we're in now, the album landed like a digital age myth of Sisyphus, reissued as a glitchy hyperpop transmission from a bedroom that might as well be a bunker. Scott, a self-produced artist who rose through algorithmic serendipity on TikTok, became the unwitting philosopher of a generation for whom the border between the private self and the public sphere had already dissolved into static. Public Void is the sound of someone staring into that static and refusing to look away. Now, to call the album music philosophy is not to impose an academic framework onto something that resisted. Scott's lyrics are already densely theoretical in the way that lived experience becomes theoretical when you can't stop thinking about it. The album's 10 tracks from a loosely woven treatise on emptiness, mediation, embodiment, and the peculiar horror of being told to feel better in a world that makes feeling well structurally impossible. It is a work of nihilist inquiry that does not ask for permission, a feminist critique of the beautiful corpse, and a sonic enactment of the void it names. And what follows, I want to take Public Void seriously as philosophy, not by translating it into jargon, but by letting its own conceptual architecture unfold. The void as public sphere. The album's central conceit is right there in the title. The void is not private. It is not the romantic abyss of the solitary existentialist, nor the spiritual dark night of the soul. It is public. It is a shared, flattened, endlessly scrollable emptiness that we enter every time we open a screen. The void has an address, and it is everywhere. Scott's genius is to map this ontological emptiness onto the very platforms that mediate modern selfhood, transforming a metaphysical category into a materialist critique. Public Void, if it was a title track, which it isn't, it would arrive both as a summation and disintegration over a bed of distorted synths and what sounds like a music box being slowly crushed. Scott would sing with the flat effect of someone who has run out of performative emotion. I'm in the public void, I'm in the public void, and I'm never coming home. The repetition is liturgical, but hollowed out, a mantra for a religion that has already admitted God is dead. The void here is not a place you fall into by accident, it is where you go to be seen. To be seen in Scott's diagnosis is to be consumed by an audience that demands your interiority as content, and then discards the husk. The public qualifier transforms the void from a metaphor into a political economic structure. Late capitalism has literalized nothingness. One of my favorite songs, the fusion of void and platform appears with savage clarity, Cigarette Ahegio, perhaps the album's most jarring track. The title itself is a collision of signifiers, a cigarette sign of jaded, analog, cool, and slow suicide. The Ahegio, a pornographic and anime trope of exaggerated, rolling-eyed pleasure, repackaged as a meme. Scott weaponizes the juxtaposition. I'm so tired of being a fucking cigarette Ahegio, she snarls, her voice digitally chopped in. Auto-tune is something that sounds simultaneously robotic and desperate. The line here is a philosophical grenade. It names the condition of performing one's own degradation for a public that expects irony, arousal, and despair to be indistinguishable. Baudrillard's hyperreality, the copy without an original, finds its perfect emblem in the TikTok face where emotion is only ever a quotation of itself. Scott is not just critiquing this, she is performing the impossibility of exiting it, because the performance itself might be all that's left of the self. This is one of her biggest songs, Rat. It opened the album on a more grounded but equally corrosive plane, hustle culture that turns selfhood into a competitive enterprise. The Rat is the neoliberal subject par excellence, wily, adaptive, always on the grind, always one step ahead of its own exhaustion. But Scott's Rat is also self-aware, and that awareness is the curse. The void here is a space of work without meaning, of productivity as identity, and Rat sets the album's philosophical stakes. If the self is just a set of marketable skills, what is left when the market demands everything? So, if the public void is a space of mediated nothingness, the body becomes a site where that nothingness is most brutally inscribed. Public Void is an album haunted by bodies, female bodies, sick bodies, dead bodies, bodies that refuse to function according to the demands placed upon them. Scott's body is not a temple, it is a crime scene, a malfunctioning machine, and sometimes a punchline she's too tired to deliver. think we'll talk about, let me see, American healthcare, specifically. Like, this is a reality of debt and decay. The song reads the body as a broken commodity in a system that offers repair only at the cost of perpetual financial and spiritual extraction. The void here is the gap between the body's needs and the market's indifference. To be ill in America, Scott suggests, is to experience the void as a billing code. I don't know if I talked about, yeah, Feel Better. It's like an anti-self-care anthem. And like, she's saying to feel better is to buy the after therapy, the journal, the smoothie, the mindset, and if you fail, the failure is yours. Song's escalation to a wall of distorted noise mirrors the internal logic of the public void. Demands you feel better so you can be a more productive void citizen, and if the void is the cause of your sickness, well, that's a contradiction the song refuses to resolve. Feel better is the sound of the absurd weaponized against the self-help imperium. I'd say it offers nihilism, which is properly understood is not a destination but a clearing. By naming the void, by making it public, Scott performs an act of radical honesty. That is itself a kind of resistance. It does bring a tradition of negative philosophy, the via negativa apophatic theology, Adorno's negative dialectics, that insists on the critical power of saying no. It's a grand refusal of compulsory wellness, a performative authenticity of the demand to aesthetize one's suffering into something palatable. It's a kind of dark solidarity at work. So, let me see here. We're going to talk about... I really want to talk about Willow Smith's music. Lately, I feel everything coping mechanism mainly. But I think we're going to finish this video off with a shorter one. And that'll be No Wow by The Kills. So, this is more astrology based. On February 21st, wow, only a few days before my birthday, holy shit, 22. Literally 5 days before my birthday, as the sun drowned in Piscean tides and Saturn wept shuddering tears in Cancer, the Kills issue their second album. A black and white Polaroid of the soul, a rejection slip to the universe. No Wow is not a record. It is an astral event, a birth chart for a generation too disillusioned to ask for more, yet too stubborn to stop wanting. What follows is the horoscope of that moment, cast in 12 tracks, and a hidden prayer revealing a work of accidental Pythagorean precision. A raw minimalist hex against the hype. So let's first start off talking about the natal chart, a sky that refused applause. Imagine the heavens on that late winter day. The sun set at 2 degrees Pisces, the sign of dissolution, prophecy, and the ache of what cannot be held. In Pisces, the ego is a memory of a dream. Alison Mosshart's voice would become that solar energy, unmoored, spectral, capable of melting into Jamie Hintz's nicotine-stained riffs like mist into a leather jacket. Mercury, the messenger, was retrograde in Aquarius, communication deliberately fractured, slogans turned inside out, words as sparse and cold as neon on wet asphalt. Venus, too, languished in Pisces, exalting a love that is always already leaving, while Mars in Capricorn struck the flint, ambition reduced to a drum machine's pulse, every choppy guitar chord a calculated blow. The outer planets form a slow motion architecture here, so Saturn in Cancer, the great malefic in the sign of home and membrane, insisted on emotional austerity. This album is a shell, a fortress built from the bare minimum. Uranus in Pisces, the lightning bolt of chaos in the ocean of the sublime, ensured every song could fracture without warning. Neptune in Aquarius draped a collective veil of alienation. Pluto in Sag demanded that every love song be a death drive, every road a pilgrimage to an underworld. And Jupiter, expansive in Libra, the sign of partnership, reveals the secret. No Wow is a dualistic rite, a dialectic between Hintz's terse architectures and Mosshart's feral confessions. Each track a house cusp between soul and structure. This is no mere backdrop. This is the score. 12 houses, a track-by-track astro-philosophical transit. So the first house, no wow, Saturn in Cancer opposite Mars in Capricorn. The opening title track arrives as a boundary, a Saturnian node dressed in a riff so skeletal it could be a bone. You're gonna have to do better than that, Ma's heart intones, her voice a flat line, the ultimate refusal of the spectacle. Here the Cancerian shell meets the Capricornian discipline. Emotion is rationed, protected, weaponized. Philosophically, it's a primer in Stoic epistemology. Epictetus taught that we are disturbed not by things but by our judgments of them. No wow is the extinction of a false judgment, a refusal to assent to the impression that the world owes us dazzle. It's the album's thesis. Authenticity is a negative space. Second house, love is a deserter. Venus in Pisces square Jupiter in Libra. Value systems crumble. The song marches on Hintz's military guitar. Mars in Capricorn's drill sergeant, but the lyric is a lament for a love that's already ghosted. Venus in Pisces idealizes, clings to a transcendent union. Jupiter in Libra yearns for perfect relational harmony, but their square is a cosmic betrayal. Love deserts as Schopenhauer knew it must. The will blindly seeks satisfaction, only to discover that every object is a decoy. I want you, I need you, I'm sick and tired of that too, is a soundtrack to the philosopher's pendulum swinging between craving and boredom. Third house, Dead Road 7, Pluto and Sag conjunct the galactic center. Third house rules short journeys, and this one is a descent. Sag is the sign of the quest, but Pluto there turns the road into a catabasis. The number 7 echoes Gnostic mystery. The dead road is the Nietzschean path beyond good and evil, where God is dead and all that remains is the will to power painted in dirty guitar slides. I'm on a dead road, I got a dead soul, Moss Heart declares, in a Camusian register. The dead road is the absurd self, neither meaningful nor meaningless, simply there, and we must imagine Sisyphus strumming along. Fourth house, at the back of the shell, Neptune in Aquarius, Saturn in Cancer. The house of roots and mother, the shell is a Cancerian home, but it's protective casing for the hollow center. Neptune in Aquarius turns the intimate into the alien. The shell is a technological simulacrum, a Baudrillardian precession of the model. We are at the back of something that has already replaced the real with its own absence. The track's claustrophobic submerged production sounds like a broadcast from a drowned radio station. It's the uncanny, the Heimlich made unheimlich, a home that was never home. The fifth house. I hate the way you love. Mars squared Venus, Rahu and Aries. The house of romance, creativity, and children. Here love is a warfare of mirrored loathing. Mars-Venus square becomes a Hegelian master-slave dialectic. Each partner seeks recognition but finds only the reflection of their own need. I hate the way you love me is the cry of a consciousness trapped in the look of the other, what Sartre called hell. Rahu in Aries demands individuation, a violent separation from the Libra's kid to codependent choreography. This song is the sound of that birth, bloody and unapologetic. Sixth house, the good one, Venus and Pisces trine, Cancer, Saturn. Daily ritual is a grind of service. In this house, love is a routine of yearning. The good ones are platonic forms. The ideal lovers we spend our days chasing but can never touch because they exist in a realm beyond becoming. The song is a slow, drugged waltz. Venus and Pisces dreams the perfect, while Saturn and Cancer chokes it with memory. It's the most tender track on the album, but its tenderness is a kind of living death. The recognition that the good ones always get away, leaving us with only the ritual of longing. Seventh house. Rodeo Town, Jupiter and Libra, Pluto and Sag, the house of open enemies and partnerships. Here to Kill takes on the myth of America. The rodeo is a theater of false promise, a collective other. Libra's Jupiter seeks justice but finds only a carnival of dust and broken horses. Pluto and Sag exposes the rot beneath the frontier myth. The Rodeo Town is a simulacrum of the wild, a museum of a dead idea. Camus' absurd hero, the rodeo clown, laughs at the bull, at the crowd, at the very structured allegorum. The track is a tumbleweed existentialism, a honky-tonk for those who've seen through the show. Eighth house, Murder Mile, Pluto, Mars and Capricorn trine Saturn. The house of sex, death, and transformation, a slow grinding threat. Mars and Capricorn gives a baseline of predatory patience. Pluto's trine to Saturn seals the deal. Death is structured, inevitable, almost bureaucratic. The murder mile is battalion transgression, and eroticism that seeks not union, but the little death, the crossing of a boundary that affirms life by brushing against its negation. Mozart's whispered vocals are a knife drawn slowly across the throat, the sound of a libido that knows only limited experiences. Ninth house, Ticketman, Mercury in Aquarius, Uranus and Pisces. The house of higher knowledge, travel, and the final passage. The Ticketman is a psychopomp, Mercury in Aquarius as a detached guide, a conductor with a clipboard on the train to nowhere. The track's lurching rhythm evokes a locomotive of the dispossessed. Heidegger's being towards death finds his pop incarnation. The ticket is our mortality, already punched at birth. We are all in transit, but the destination is not a place. It's a revelation that the journey was always a loop. I Hate the Way You Love Part 2, 10th House Hidden Transmission. If the first iteration was a conflict, the reprise is a reputation, the public face of the struggle. It's a shorter, more abrasive, a coda that refuses resolution. The charts mid-heaven, the highest point, is a broken mirror. We are left with the echo, conflict as identity. The 11th house, Sweet Cloud, Uranus and Pisces, Neptune and Aquarius. Hidden track, secret house of friends and collective dreams. After the finality of Ticketman, silence falls, then a cloud of static and melody emerges. Uranus and Pisces is the lightning and the fog. Neptune and Aquarius is the group hallucination. Sweet Cloud is a dissolution of boundaries, a fleeting return to the oceanic before the record needle lifts. It's Kierkegaard's aesthetic sphere in its most vaporized form. Pleasure that evaporates the moment it is tasted, leaving no commitment. Only a memory of sweetness, the perfect coda to a record that rejects solid ground. The No-Wow dialectic. Philosophy as a sonic weapon. Across these 12 houses, a unified philosophical stance emerges, a kind of punk apophaticism. The no-wow is not nihilism, though it uses nihilistic tools. It is rather a rigorous via negativa. The only way to salvage the authentic is to strip away every layer of imposed spectacle, to refuse the wow that consumer culture demands in exchange for a dopamine hit. In a world of hyperreality, where the map precedes the territory, the kills draw a blank space and call it a song. This is the heart of the chart. Saturn in Cancer opposing Mars in Capricorn. The discipline of minimalism, Mars in Capricorn, serves an emotional truth. Saturn in Cancer, so fragile it can only survive by being hidden in plain sight. The duo's interplay hints as the architect of limits. Ma's heart is the voice of a wounded interiority, mirrors the ancient philosophical dyad of form and matter. Together they produce not a synthesis, but a sustained tension, a binary star system, spinning out of gravity that pulls the listener to a third space, the real. In the tradition of the cynics, who lives in accordance with nature to mock the pretenses of society, the kills make a virtue of poverty of sound. Diogenes' tub is Hintz's 4-track recorder, the middle finger is Alexander is Ma's heart's howl that needs no reverb. No wow is a philosophical act because it chooses intentional lack over inflated abundance. Embodying the insight that desire itself, not its object, is a source of both art and suffering. The legacy. Fixed star in the indie firmament. Nearly 2 decades on, the album's transits remain active. Pluto has since entered Aquarius, sextiling its natal position in Sag, reactivating the album's shadow myths. We live now in a totalized wow, an infinite scroll of content that demands our awe at every second. In this context, no wow feels prophetic, a dispensation to look away, to refuse, to find the sublime in the smudged and the stripped back. The Kills' 2005 Cosmos was not a gift, it was a test. It asked, can you sit with us? Can you let the quiet burn? To pass the test is to discover that astrology is not a fate, but a grammar of questions, and philosophy is not a doctrine, but a way of walking down a dead road with your eyes open. The album's final instruction, etched in its closing cloud, is simple. Do not be impressed. Be true. And with that, I'll end off. So peace and love. I'll see you in the next one. Piscean out.